Cool. Fun. Fun, fun, fun. YouTube's just letting me know all of my options for live, but it is, the dawn of a full moon. I hope you are well. I hope that these waves are passing you uh, and not rushing you under. Um, Special guest, Bone Daddy. Uh, he's a fun addition today. Um, let's see. Full moon, cold moon, spirit moon in Anishinaabe way. Which is interesting because I was like, well, why do they call it a wolf moon? And it's because wolves howl at the moon, or what have you. Uh, Something about wolves howling in the cold moon, and I, makes me think to how our pets or dogs, pets in general, will bark at spirits in the night, and when we can't see anything there. So it's just fun how all of that is, somewhat connected. Um, the moon is in Leo, glamorous, wonderful, uh, Spitfire Leo. It is opposing the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in I guess the last time I checked was 0 degrees Aquarius, but moving into when full moon is proper. Um, Slowly but surely. I mean, fast for itself, but slowly but surely. Um, it's interesting looking at the charts because I just kind of follow the light and I don't know, see where that takes me. And it's a really foggy day today, and that in and of itself is a lot of like particles bouncing, and there's so much energy, like heated energy in Capricorn, sort of fueling this fire and sort of in the uh, baseline of these crosshairs, um, and it very much expressed to me this sort of magnified reflection happening, and the way that ourselves can uh, create a reflecting light in the world and also have the same kind of energy of a beam of light and a lot of bouncing molecules when we don't know what to do with that, or when we don't have a direction, I suppose, to do that. In the same way that I suppose sometimes you're expected to dim your brights, passing others, although I don't think spiritually we need to. Although the more aware we are of it and the more aware we are of the directional quality of it, the more efficient we become with those things, which is ideally what you're supposed to do with your brights when you're driving too. Um, so again, funny how that works out in that way. Um, I think there's a lot of tension before that momentum that will be relieved when all planets are moving direct, and Uranus is no longer retrograde. Um, reflections of in those reflections, I think, are reflections of pain, or reflections of promises to ourselves or to loved ones, which all the more appropriate for a spirit moon too, because sometimes those are the things that uh, cut and make you bleed. That really hit deep and um, also fuel you in such a incredible way. Um, and continue to shine in the darkest of nights. Really, um, it very much exists in that way, like a sort of beam of light, from top to bottom, and where all of this energy is going to flow. Um, but also from like seventh house to first house in what I was looking at. So very much pre the idea of even death and obliteration. Um, the creation of new ideas, being in connection. And I think that's what a lot of us struggle with all the time. That's why we're surrounded in a world full of distractions and feigned connection and like lubricant uh, that becomes a dependency. Um, but connection is what creates a new. So, how solid are those things that we're connecting to? And why or why not? Why are the things that we're not connecting to? And when we have a problem, uh, feeling like we can because we think it's ourselves, I have learned in my own being that less anxiety stopped me from creating new connections. Uh, when I'm anxious, ask more questions. And I love asking questions in general, but when you're anxious, it does give you something to focus on, and you learn a lot in those moments too. Um, and I think people feel really heard, and you'd be surprised how uh, little that happens despite us being so loud on the internet. If if that makes sense. Um, Venus, Mars, and Mercury in Capricorn, trining Jupiter and Uranus, which 100% I think that it's a lot of energy. You can't deny it. There's a lot of just, cooks in the kitchen, if you will. And Jupiter and Uranus continue to teach us great lessons collectively and offer us opportunities to see that growth. For as much as people associate Jupiter with luck, um, sometimes bad luck teaches you a little more. So I think Jupiter understands that, but I don't necessarily know if we do. Um, North node stuff. If North leads Aries, then our contrarian is Libra. Antithetical in that, while it is tugging forward as Aries does, the battering ram presses on. The creator of new, the stubborn brute. Ooh, I love how that rhymed. Um, there's a lot of beneficial trines or sextiles, I think, that fucks with a lot of these antithetical squares and contrarian sort of energies. And again, I think it's sort of like the do we, is there a death of the old self, or is there just a new becoming? Is there, a death of old ways, or is there just a new becoming? Um, Sometimes I think we get obsessed with cutting off people, like pieces of ourselves, uh, rather than in creating. Um, Two extremes. There has to be. There's always a middle ground. There's always a third option. There's always like another way out. Um, but all of that is like all of that general energy. The North in Aries is very much pulling. Chiron is also still in Aries, and that's very much the again reflections of our pain and reflections of our promises, because those two things often go hand in hand when our heart is broken and we vow to never love again, or when our heart is broken and we vow to live our life like we've never lived it before. Um, those are very important aspects of this. Um, the South being contrarian in slowing down and aligning for the shot that Aries wants to take in all of these Capricorn, intensities with Mars and Venus and Mercury, um, for as motivated as those energies may be. Um, all of the contrarian energy is also like, but wait, or do you want to even shoot at all? Because I do feel like there's very much this sacrificing of integrity in a lot of ways, or the ways in which we cut ourselves off at the knees, the ways in which that we've also been told in a narrative that things like that love is supposed to hurt, and that and pain is a whole different conversation, but that we have to sort of martyr ourselves for love, or destroy ourselves to be loved. And that is a lie of Western capitalism. And I think very much a lie written in the narrative of how we were taught to love. And so all of the Venus energy in the last months and videos prior and what have you, and learning that I think will be asked for new action, but we're also becoming very clear on that, and clear in what we need, and sort of nurturing how we're going to communicate that or connect to that and with that. Again, connection. Let's see. Notes. Bah, 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 bah. Don't sacrifice your integrity for actions that you don't believe in. Um, Mars is squaring the ascendant, which is opposing Chiron. And again, that sort of contrarian energy. Um, but I think that's very much, are we connecting for, to sake ourselves, or are we connecting in authentic self? Are we connecting in like people pleasing is like almost too easy to really round that whole concept out. Um, but sometimes it is an outside pleasure, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with anything but yourself and the ways in which you reward your system, or feel rewarded by your existence, I suppose. Not that it needs a reward, but feel seen, feeling appreciated, feeling understood, often feels much like a reward, and it rightful is, which is a new identity in Capricorn entirely, rather than award being a payout or being, whatever it is that's unhealthy, rather it being a shot, rather than it being a shot, rather than it being a cupcake or whatever it is. Cupcakes are always a great reward, but the ways in which we feel about it is the ways in which our body digests it, and whether or not it becomes utilized in a nutritious way. Nurturing in a nutritious way. Nurturing will come up. What was I saying? Da, 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 da. The ways in which we digest that emotionally, which is, I think, the root of Capricorn, rather than and like the most grounding aspect of Capricorn, rather than all of the mean girls, money driven nonsense that we hear about so consistently. Um, Da 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 da. Ceres is in Sagittarius, and has been, but is absolute whispers of true self. The question is, will the collective allow that? Because we are taught that the whispers are the wrong things. Um, but I think we can tell the difference. Uh, will the collective allow that to lead in subtle influence that does not burn out as quickly as these squares may? Because the squares are really intense. Think endurance over strength. That is very much the calling to this, despite all of the calling to Aries brute energy. That's where that line came from. Funny. Um, Da, 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 da. Black Moon Lilith is in Leo as well. And for 9 months, which very much connects back to the connects back to the Ceres energy. Because Ceres very much serves as this nurturer and this sort of mother-like energy. So rather than leading the pack, she's kind of held back and watching. Not held back. She's, the responsible one is the one that walks behind to make sure that everybody's fucking okay. Um, and that's very much this energy. Are you going to allow that energy to, from bottom to top, really fuel this really intense and momentous reflection, and sort of reflection up. It's interesting how light surprises you in those ways. But there's definitely like this uh double image sort of going on, that will clarify. And so that definitely like explains any like chaos or wondering or nostalgia in the air. But this is meant to clarify it. And Black Moon Lilith in Leo can lead with terrifying grace, in the most wonderful way, if we let it, um, and if we make the most of the intensity that Chiron holds and that Capricorn holds, and the curveball, that Pluto and Aquarius will continue to be. Be excited by it, but excitement is also terror. I mean, and fear. Um, and not fear, but excitement is also anxiety. Um, it does not have to exist as fear, when you understand that the excitement and the anxiety just need a little sense and order, which is where this Capricorn information will be useful if we listen to it and if we understand what is grounding and rewarding for our to nourish our system. Do you see how that all connects? Party. Ultimately, I think it will be a time of understanding and fully actualizing if we are led by our pain or if we are led through our pain. Those are two very different things. And is again, whatever I said about the brute, I think the difference between like controlled release and like breaking something. Um, yeah, yeah. So we're gonna pull some cards. And I will stop talking now. I guess I won't. But we will pull some cards to clarify that and see what it is that we can learn, can take, can move with through this moon. I'm gonna move this thing. Taking my time. Okay, we will leave it there. And I'm going to say two things. Don't do anything because you have to, do it because you want to. And don't let anybody tell you that you're not a pretty kitty or whatever it is that you know that you are in your heart. Period. Even though we're surrounded, especially with this new year, by ads that are telling us exactly the opposite of that. Lovely. Temperance, bottom of the deck. Inner world balance. I know we talked about a lot of abstention last time. There's a lot of rage, a lot of pain, like I said, molecules bouncing, and a lot of unsureness. Not just in the bottom of the deck, but in general. The temperance technically is a 14. But I feel like ultimately, and especially with this placement, that can be your 4 exponential, you're for magnified, you're for, reinforced, which is again, what are the things that make you feel, safe, rewarded, nourished? What are the staples of your spiritual household? I guess think of it that way. You know, what are the things that you have to do to maintain your space? And relay that mentally. Maybe that's going through your gallery and deleting a bunch of things you don't know. I have to do that. Maybe that's a lot of things. Maybe that's going through old notes and seeing what you can make of it. Maybe that's whatever it is. The little things that we do to maintenance, the washing of dishes of our mind, the mopping of floors of our bodies, uh, in whatever way that means to you. Um, that makes you feel more prepared to do whatever it is that you don't want to do or don't aren't excited about or postponing or what have you. I don't even necessarily think those things are necessarily attached. Sometimes I think we're just obsessed with postponing things as if we're just trying to delay time, as if it makes it longer, as if it makes it more of it. Trying to exponentially create time in our head actually costs us a lot. Um, and I don't think that that's an I don't want to do thing. I think that's just um, hesitation around something, fear and hesitation around something. And you'd be surprised when you look at it that way, what that can actually show you. Are you procrastinating? Uh, what do I do this with? I procrastinate doing the dishes. I procrastinate painting sometimes, a lot of times. And had a lot of self-discovery about it being a fear of failure and a fear of ruining something. And that being such a rigid uh, paradigm in my mind that it sort of hindered my ability to allow myself to play with my own creation. So don't do that. Find joy, find playfulness in lots of things. And that also is never unsure, because you're exploring and you're experimenting. Um, this is also where you're learning rather than teaching, or creating not just necessarily for monetary value, not making a career out of a craft, uh, kind of thing. Um, but just because you're not doesn't make it not worthwhile. Um, and not doing it is maybe more of a turn your world upside down moment than you would have thought. Uh, whether that be in a good or a bad way. In a Either way, it's something to notice and something to address. Let's see. At the root of rage, at the root of pain, at the root of, um, I feel like even inability, like not inability, but like when we are so depressed that we can't get out of bed is often because we have too many things that we're doing in our heads. um and kind of going down the list, visualizing, or like seeing these things in our mind and being exhausted by it already, or seeing this list in our mind and being exhausted by it already, and not and that in and of itself is sort of incapacitating and doesn't allow you to move in a lot of ways. Um but I think in those moments, if you pay attention to where that rage, pain, anger, depression, hurt, sadness is coming from and what it feels like, very literally. Like maybe you can't move, maybe you're, uh, feeling very numb. But in that moment, where do you feel that? Does it feel outside of you? Does it feel in the gut of you? Um, and sit with that. And you'd be surprised what comes through. And I will say, maybe not even just in the spirit moon, but in those silences. Uh, Sometimes you will often find support from uh, those that have been in your life that are no longer here. Uh, in those ways, I think they do still or can still chime in those sort of empty spaces. Again, that whisper, that Ceres whisper. Um, for as wild as that sounds, uh, make of it what you will. But sometimes we remember things, and your heart knows that it's because that person is still watching you, and loving you, and holding you from afar. Um, moving forward, this Page of Swords, this unsureness with a weapon, or this, it's not even like wheeled or outside, and it's not even stuck into the ground. It's very much stuck out into the world. It's inverted. Um, with unsureness, with it's very much like survival mindset and defense, defensiveness. When you don't feel safe, when you don't feel loved, you do kind of assume the worst. Um, and that's not to say that it's the safest thing to assume the best in people either. I often don't. For assuming the best in people, I also don't give trust easy or often. Um, and those two things seem counterintuitive, but that's just been my balance. And when that needs to change, perhaps it'll change. I mean, when that needs to change, it'll change. Uh, but we'll see when. Um, but with that being said, um, this Page of Swords and this sword can and will turn into a Page of Wands, which is an ultimate creator, an ultimate illustrator of communication and emotion. It's effortless, it's easeful, it's relaxing, it's nurturing, it's creative, it's a perfect tempered warmth, which is beautiful because my heater went off before this. Um, and I think is very shrouded and shielded in their surroundings, as opposed to feeling vulnerable, open, and sort of at odds and not at ease, like this Page of Swords is inverted. Um, very much coming from a Knight of Wands at odds as well, who is in, again, survival mode. It's a feeling of lack. It's um, struggle to survive, and that just ain't living, or does not feel like living. And that's again often where we get caught into doing what we need to or have to versus what we want to. And again, perhaps it's not that those things aren't things that we want, but things that we need to reframe the way that we're looking at it, or reframe the way that we're, that our body's remembering it, or going about it, or what have you. Um, why do these things feel like a burden? Um, and finding where that attachment is. It's not that I'm afraid of painting, it's that I'm afraid of failure, or afraid of, what was the other one? Fucking it up. Yeah. Very real emotions and real things, but changes the experience when you change the way that you shine a light on it, which is again this intensely reflective time. Um, Despite all the hazy reflections, there's clarity beyond um, this Page of Swords, and I think the in the same place you would hold yourself. Like it's very much just like arms, like cloaks and pockets, and in the same way that one might hold a baby. Um, and that in and of itself holds clarity. That also ultimately will hold connection. Um, because those very literally, like those moments in birthright and what have you, are very connecting neurologically for the parent and the child. Um, and in that, how are we holding ourselves? How are we communicating neurologically with ourselves and creating connective experience in ourselves? Ultimately, what is your left eye reality, truly, in a magical sense and in a neurological sense? That is also why Black Man Lilith is here, because the left-hand path is very important. Is very important. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, your emotional, I mean, the emotional side, or the left-hand path, the, left eye connection, um, is an emotional connection, is a receptive connection. And when those emotions run wild, it is like stallions in your body, and they will break through one way or another. But there's healthy ways of doing this. There's comforting ways of doing this. There's meditative ways of doing this, rather than letting your mind run like wild stallions, or your body or your blood run like wild stallions. And 100%, I know this feeling all too well. And it comes from a place, like chemically, reactively, like we are all of this energy bottled up and boiling, and sometimes your spirit grows, um, and your emotions boil over, and it feels like it'll split your skin. Um, but that is not the only way that it gets out. In fact, you can stretch your body back around it, and you can soften the edges, and you can release, so that the light gets in and not the darkness. So that release, so that it's creative and healing and not harmful to yourself or anyone, and not chaotic, uh, or scornful of the flesh or the body that you're given in, um, the portal that you are. That's a really rough place to be. Uh, but for all the fire and flames and wildness that it is, um, does find and can find and will find and moves to find through the grace of a sure Page of Swords. And not sure because he knows, because it's a young card, but sure because sometimes you're just down to clown. And sometimes you trust yourself more than anything else, and that can take you really far. And that can widen a lot of horizons. Um, but because of the grace of the Temperance and this Page of Swords, out comes this Page of Wands with beautiful ability to create in calm and connective, and have this sort of great capacity for emotion, and great capacity for creativity in a very passive way, um, which is interesting given this is Leo. Um, Not passive in that you're refraining or silencing, but sometimes the loudest people in the room aren't the ones speaking the loudest, but the ones often waiting last to speak, or waiting last to eat or do anything, because there's a level of responsibility to the room. This is very much Ceres' role as well, um, in the way that the stars are. So again, channel into that, take on however little that uh, dwarf body is. Uh, Channel that energy, because it will take you ultimately farther. Again, endurance over strength. Um, and that is, like, even in this very fiery card, would be the long lasting fire. Which, how do you build a long lasting fire? There's structure, there's layers. It takes time, but it burns through the night. and evenly disperses heat. Yeah, let me not be too literal. Oh, it's so foggy and beautiful. Okay, we pull numbers now because I have rambled enough. Oof, that was really nice. Okay. We didn't breathe before. We're gonna do it this time. I breathed before I did the live. I was nervous. Friend with me. Now that I'm not nervous, you're not nervous. Much like we have some cards in between us. Let's rock out. Take some breaths together. Take a deep breath in. And exhale your shadow card. Take a deep breath in. And exhale your shadow card. One last deep breath in. And exhale. That is very nice. Still a lot of energy, still a lot of heat. But from the inside, so it's much more cooling. And the shakiness was much steadier. So I hope that this is calming and steadying in light of all of that shaking, which is honestly probably why I didn't breathe like up here, was because that energy is real shaky. I don't need that all the time. 6, king, 2, 7. 6 of spades, king of wands, 2 of spades, 7 of diamonds, bottom of the deck. Two of spades with this page of wands is very much a new path, new direction, redirection, again, reflection, or the ways in which that we shed light on things. Those decisions can't be anticipated necessarily. Similar to the way I think that this page of swords being inverted was like turn the world upside down. Those things can't be anticipated. We're never really prepared enough. But that's such a faulty way of looking at things too. And I know that. I know that. I know that. But I do say that to myself a lot too. It's like, but I want to be prepared for A, B, C, and D before I do this thing. Um, but we really just are never truly truly feel that. Um, we never really feel that enough, even though deep down we may truly be very prepared. There's a lot of doubt. There's always like, but what if? But I'm not gonna da 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 da. And so this 2 of spades is a daunting new path uh, that cannot be anticipated and must be felt. It's like being lost in the woods. Uh, go with what you feel, which will be what you hear in the silence, or like what exists between the lines, like the subtleties of the moment. or just because you give yourself a chance to play, or feel like you made a mistake, really. Uh, there is no wrong direction. There is no wrong direction unless you do not move from this two of spades, essentially. In which case, that in this 9-month period with Black Moon Lilith, that will be like not going for checkups, like not, doing what you need to do to nurture your body and what it's growing at this time. Um, da, 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 da. This feels kind of like a grueling process. Um, and that will make it all the harder to not anticipate uh forward or out of this. Um, and that's not to say don't look on the bright side. That is to say do not get comparative. Um, Comparison is the killer. Um, Always look on the bright side. Always, remember that for what religious people say is this too shall pass. I think physics tells us that for every uphill turn is a downhill swing. And that is much more comforting to me. Uh, with that being said, um, allow that momentum to move. However, and again, momentum and movement. Um, but what did I say? Don't get caught in comparison. I was, doing A, B, and C this time last year, or what, comparing yourself to others, comparing yourself to yourself at any other point, or where you thought you would be, or what have you, is not going to be conducive to movement. That is where you get rigid. That's where you get, you know, tight on these, boundaries of perfection, and fear of failure really starts to creep in. So do not do that to yourself. Slow yourself down. This King of Wands is very much saying that. Um, King of Clubs is very much saying that. Slow yourself down. Fit things together neatly the way you like. It's not so much make your bed in the morning as much as it is uh, the feeling of smoothing smoothing edges, um, which is again a reframing of something that's a very military concept. Um, but ultimately, rather than like, at ease, soldier, be nice to your sheets, uh, or enjoy the textures. Is it something that you actually enjoy? And maybe if you don't, there's that's something to change, and maybe why you haven't been sleeping as well. Um, Whoever, I don't know. Uh, let's see. Um, the six is a very open-ended cycle. Um, it is a cycle that already has goodness in it. Um, don't become like altogether new, thinking that every part of you is flawed when ultimately nothing in you is broken. Um, but it's like over cleaning, and for what? Like building because you feel like you have nothing, or building because you love to see yourself grow. Um, because one is operating in like forcefulness, and needing to be forceful and powerful and respected or whatever, and the other is very much operating in gratitude and wanting to share, and again, connection. And those two things are kind of polar opposites. One's much more a tyrant, and the other is much more community nurturer. Um, Within that great intensity between those two, um, as grand as this King of Clubs is, uh, and as again, there's like two sides to the coin. As like wild as all of that energy can be, when it's slowed down, when it's aligned, it can move a lot more fluidly. And again, we've got endurance over strength, um, or this, more subtle concept, um, into this Two of Spades. So we've got options, and that's very much what all of these crossroads are too. And we have to not pick a side, nothing is binary, but make a choice, and make a choice that aligns with your integrity, so that your body does not fight you in movement, because that also exists a lot. And something that I think I've gathered with, anxiety on, dates when you've got a bad feeling, or, um, meeting new people in general. Sometimes there's something deeper in there, which is again why we excavate. Is it an internal fear? Is it your body telling you that there's something amiss, um, or something not quite in alignment, or those who are experiencing nervousness going out or what have you, or like anxious stomach or nausea, in getting sober, or in hanging out with people that are doing things that they weren't used to, or that they aren't anymore. Um, all of those things are very much where your body and your brain are telling you that they want to be in alignment, and what you're doing right now is sort of immobilizing. Um, so pay attention to those moments, and uh, see where you can fit those pieces together so that you have a clear view of yourself and clear knowledge of where you want to go. The Seven of Diamonds at the bottom of the deck is grace and gift, and I think offering, is something to believe in, is something which is, again, what did I say? Don't do something about not, don't sacrifice your integrity for actions that you don't believe in. That's what I said. And that is, I think, a big part in why people probably end up homeless, among many things, uh, which doesn't sound like a gift or a blessing. But to walk in integrity in this world is a difficult task. Um, and we're all constantly calibrating with new information. But are we suffering in silence, struggling alone, or asking for what we need? Um, and I think that's where the blessing comes in. That's where the gift comes in. That's where the luck comes in. Are you asking for what you need? Even in a Jupiterian sense, um, it's a parent planet. It's a large planet. It's a long transit. And even, our parents have told us that, what is it? Closed mouths don't get fed. But they're also not mind readers, and they have to sort of understand and be told in some way, shape, or form what it is that's wanted. Um, they have to pay attention. There has to be communication. Uh, both things exist internally before they do externally, and that's very much what these planets are going to teach us as well. Um, Damn, that got real literal and very serious. um, I think that's clear as day. But if you have any questions, party on. Throw it in the comments, let me know. And if you have a little tidbit or story or aside that you would like to add, or I don't know, question, concern, comment, party on. Um, and I wish you well. Thank you for spending a little time with me, and witnessing these strange little particles as they bounce around us. Um, Thank you for always looking internal so that the external can reflect positively in the world. I appreciate people who care about growing, however that may be, and who opt to try to listen to what their body's saying and what their internal spirit can show. Love you. Thanks for partying. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for spending time and sharing time. Thank you for rocking out. But I'm gonna go and leave you with this so you can ponder and let me know how you feel about it. But until then, until next time, I will see you. Adios. Oh gosh, now how do I turn it off? Oh, buddy.